Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Jon Ledyard here for a special episode of the Rookie Review. Been doing some rankings on a lot of the shows here that we've had over the last couple of weeks, and now it's time to give away some midseason awards. Jon and I are going to give you our midseason all-rookie teams, offense and defense. Jon, how you doing, my friend? Was this exercise tough for you? I feel like there were a couple of spots where it was tough, but the others pretty streamlined. What'd you think?
Yeah, I didn't think it was too difficult. I think some of the more big picture conversations even that we have around some of these position groups, including which position groups are translating quickly to the NFL. Is that a trend we've seen? And which ones are taking some more time perhaps to translate to the NFL? I think those things are going to be some of the things that we really talk about on this show that may be interesting. But generally speaking, I think other than wide receiver, corner, a little bit safety, maybe. I don't think there were many difficult decisions to complete the midseason all rookie team at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that there's some shout outs I think that I'll give throughout the show, but not necessarily guys who would have contended for that top spot, which it'll be fun to, I think, recognize a lot of these rookies here anyways. We're going to talk about a lot of different PFF statistics on this show. We're going to talk about PFF grades, some data points, everything. You could see all that stuff for yourself by going over to PFF.com, getting yourself a PFF Plus subscription, and it's not just for that stuff. If you're into fantasy football, you can optimize your fantasy team by looking at our start-sit tools. You look at the fully unlocked mock draft simulator when it comes to the actual NFL draft, all the draft guide stuff as well. And then, when we get to free agency, we'll have all sorts of free agent valuation of, whether your team should go sign this guy. It is a 365 type of a subscription that you get over at PFF.com with PFF Plus. So go check that out. Jon, I think the best way to do this, the smoothest way to do this for conversation's sake, let's do skill position players. And then we'll do offensive line. Then we'll do front seven, but we only have 6 that we're recognizing. And then secondary. So I can start. I'll read my list off, and then you can read yours off. We can see where we differ here with the skill position players. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. So start at quarterback. Even though Bo Nix's making a push for it, Bo Nix making a little bit of a push for this bad boy the last couple of weeks.
I'll never give it up.
I'll never give up, especially because he's good right now.
He's actually winning, so yeah.
So Jaden Daniels obviously is the top quarterback here for the midseason rookie award. I did have Bo Nix number 2, honestly, because of how well he has been playing over the last couple of weeks. Genuinely, I did. I think he's playing well. We'll see what happens over the last couple of weeks here. Well, the next couple of weeks here, but then through the second half of the season, I should say. But for Nix in particular, I think he is improving in the areas where you really wanted him to. When it comes to throwing the ball deeper down the field, those 10 yards or deeper, he is actually playing well. He had the 12th highest quarterback grade that we have in our system of quarterbacks who are pushing the ball 10 or more yards down the field. So I do want to give him his credit, but it's very clearly Jaden Daniels here for this award. For running back, I went with Bucky Irving. I have Bucky Irving here, and then I have Tyrone Tracy kind of coming up next. I think Tyrone Tracy would have been the next guy that I would have put in there. Also, I wanted to shout out Ray Davis. I think Ray Davis is playing well. Tight end, I'll do tight end first because it's not even a debate at all whatsoever. I don't even have really a second-place guy. It's Brock Bowers and then a country mile. But I did want to give a shout-out to Eric All, who I think is playing well for the Cincinnati Bengals. Wide receiver, though, this is where I think the debate really begins. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and then certainly because of last week, means a lot to me, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. as my third wide receiver in here. So there are a couple of other wide receivers that I want to get into, but your skill position players, let's hear it. Who you got for this midseason all-rookie team?
Yeah, so I'll give you the right list now, and I've got Caleb Williams. I've got Caleb Williams at QB2. I obviously had Jaden Daniels as well.
Starting off in the
as my top QB. I picked Williams second. I mean, Daniels is sort of the obvious choice right now. I think everybody would have him at this point. I picked Williams second because when you consider context of situation, I think Nix is actually, he's been one of the best protected quarterbacks in the league this season. And, I think Peyton is doing a pretty good job given the fact that they definitely have limited offensive personnel for sure. And I think he's played some of his best ball against teams that, didn't defend very well. Let's put it that way. And so I think that the context situation, I definitely think Nix has played a little bit better recently, but I mean, you would describe me as a hater for sure. I don't know that I'm close to buying in on the hype for Bo Nix.
We'll get you there. We'll get you there eventually. We'll get you to come on down.
Let's see how the second half of the season goes. Perhaps we'll do a show segment on it if I ever come over to your side with it. But I really do think Caleb Williams has not been like some unbelievable player this season. I also think there's a ton working against him. I think that offensive line is absolutely atrocious. I mean, you could literally see a situation in which they try to replace all five guys, or at least start the process of replacing all five guys after the season. I mean, it has been that bad at times this year. So I think that's a huge part of the issue. I also don't really love a lot of the things they've done from a design perspective. I also think he's made a lot of bad plays too at different times through the year. But seeing him find some level of stability over the past month has been encouraging to me. They're very different quarterbacks and in very different systems and very different context, so it is really hard to compare and contrast them. But that's sort of why I went with Caleb, is that I just think he's creating and doing more for his team to elevate, whereas Nick's, it's like, can we rein him in enough to do like the things that we need just to like get a W this week? And he has done a little bit more than that recently, but that's the kind of difference I see between the two. I have Bucky Irving and then Tyron Tracy as the backup. I actually would have been fine with either way on this one. Bucky has played more, but Tracy, I mean, you could definitely make a by the end of the year he might be RB1. Hopefully he's healthy. He got banged up Monday night, but he really is a dynamic player, and he's got a little more size, I think, and so you could perhaps see him become more of a workload, where Bucky Irving's probably going to be sharing carries most of the year in Tampa Bay. Brock Bowers and as the starting tight end, easy, but also at some point in the show we'll probably have a conversation about, is Bowers like already a top 5 to 7 tight end in the league, which is the second year in a row we would have that conversation about a tight end, which was unheard of before this Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta back-to-back.
Well, that's
very exciting.
That's all the conversations that we had of like, okay, well, you can't really draft a tight end high because they're not going to be worth it for you, right? Like, they're not going to be worth the set rookie contract that they'll be drafted at if you end up taking a tight end in the top 15, top 10, top 5. Like, we had to say to ourselves, there's no way the tight end is going to be worth the value that you're going to give them for the rookie contract. And now we have Sam Laporta and especially Brock Bowers, who it's like, okay, Brock Bowers was picked 13th in this draft. He would have been a good financial investment if he was picked 4th in this draft because of how well he is playing at that position.
And, you know, as I mentioned, that pick, not only has he been good, but nobody needed that pick to be good in maybe NFL history more than the Raiders did, because A, they've got absolutely nothing in terms of weapons or building blocks offensively, and B, they just, you know, rolled the dice on a tight end in the first round when they did just drafted one high the year before. And so yeah, it was we can have that debate all day, but that him working out is absolutely massive for them. So then at wide receiver, I had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., but I had as my third wide receiver, I had Ladd McConkey, and I had Marvin Harrison on my just missed group. Marvin Harrison, Xavier Worthy, and Keon Coleman were my like second team wide receivers, basically. And the reason I picked McConkey over Harrison is just watching the all 22 of both of them each week. You could certainly make a case for Harrison. I think he's been awesome, especially when you consider the ball skill stuff has been awesome. But McConkey just being open all the freaking time and being able to run the vertical route tree and being able to make contested catches this season. Like, to me, I've just seen way more to be excited about McConkey, even compared to where I was before, where I liked him before, than I have for Harrison, who I've been like, yeah, he's been basically what I expected him to be, but also like, is there ups? Like, is he going to create separation at the highest levels in the league? What kind of a wide receiver is he going to be? Is he going to have to be used in specific ways? If you want to like free him up, do you have to free him up a little bit more? He, I think, is still going to be a number one wide receiver. Absolutely awesome. I think he's having a really good rookie year. The talk from even a week ago was like, is Marvin Harrison, you know, the bust and all this stuff, and like, oh, he's better than, you know, so and so said, Brian Thomas better than so and so said. We're just jumping the gun way too much on that. This guy is so clearly very good, but I just have been really impressed with McConkey this season so far. If you're asking me again, we're saying, you know, it's even a couple months from now, end of the season, next season, I'm absolutely going with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's still going to be the best or second best wide receiver in this class. But if you're just telling me right now, like based on what I've seen so far this season, I mean, McConkey has had one of the quietest, awesome seasons in the league, and finally it broke out. I think the production on Sunday probably made people be like, oh, wow, but he's been on that level all season, and this has just been a painfully conservative offense that finally let Herbert air it out, and you saw the benefits of that to McConkey. But if you watch him on the all 22, he is open all the time, and he is fully capable of getting vertical and running that route tree as well. He has real speed that is translating to the field. So I have just been really, really impressed with him, and I'm glad the production's finally starting to show that.
It's so funny. McConkey was just only ever open at Georgia. Like, he was only ever wide open in Georgia.
35 catches or something.
And then he goes to Senior Bowl, and guess what? Nobody can guard him. There were corners at the Senior Bowl that, like, you could tell they didn't want to be a certain spot in, like, the rotation for the one-on-one drills, because they were going to have to go up against McConkey, and they knew that McConkey one-on-one, no safety help, no nothing, was just going to put him in a blender. So the dude only got open.
Draft stock by himself.
Right. He only got open at Georgia, only got open in the Senior Bowl, and guess what? In the NFL, wow, I'm shocked. He's great. He's open. Now, if Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't sort of have the monster game that he does this past week, like, even if he would have had like a normal game, I might have snuck McConkey in here. He was my next man up. And Keon Coleman.
McConkey had the monster game, Trevor.
No, but that's what I'm saying. That's why I couldn't say to myself, oh, if you just took away this week, because McConkey also had a monster week. So if you take away Marvin Harrison Jr.'s monster week, you take away McConkey's. But I think that this was really close for me, and ultimately I did go with Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't hate your call there. I will throw out another wide receiver, because I also had Keon Coleman in here, but you had Xavier Worthy as your sort of like sixth name that you mentioned there. I would actually give Jalen Coker for the Carolina Panthers that sixth spot.
Oh, wow.
Here.
Let's go.
Dude, Jalen Coker, so undrafted wide receiver out of Holy Cross. He was a record breaker while he was at Holy Cross. He just, he was a small school competition kind of a player, really got overthought in this draft class. And his numbers are really good since he has gotten into the starting lineup for Carolina. He's got an 80.1 receiving grade. Yeah, these other receivers have more receiving yards than him, but 100% of the catchable passes that have been thrown his way have been caught. He's 3 for 4 on contested catch spots, and like, he is rising up when it comes to wide receiver threat percentage and how much he is getting used in this offense. So I actually think that Jalen Coker, sort of to your Ladd McConkey, Marvin Harrison Jr. like argument, like if you're giving it to somebody right now for how they have played so far this season, you would give it to McConkey, not necessarily on who they're going to be moving forward, but I would give the nod of a second team spot to Jalen Coker over Xavier Worthy, because I think that he deserves the recognition for what he's been able to do when he's gotten out there. So he would be my sixth receiver actually here.
I think you're definitely trying to show off by name dropping Jalen Coker, but that's okay. That's fine. It's your show, so we can do that. No, Coker has been awesome. I actually mentioned him a couple weeks ago on the Read Optional podcast with Ollie, and I just said, like, I think the Panthers may have hit on a gem with Coker, just watching him. That was his first game that he really had played in. And since then, he only has, 12 catches on the season, I think, something like that.
It's not a lot yet.
Yeah. So the production's limited, the sample size of limited. I think is even his snaps are lower. I would put probably other guys over him just based on that, including Jordan Whittington, who we've talked about. I actually think they could be pretty similar players. I have to see more of Coker as a blocker. The Panthers use him pretty differently than how Whittington's used by the Rams, where you really get to see his full game get shown off pretty much every week. But I would throw Whittington in that conversation if we're going to go there with guys who have like impressed and wowed in like smaller sample sizes. I still think Worthy, he's brought another dimension to this offense. He has made some really tough catches over the past couple weeks. He is consistently open. This offense is probably never going to run through one person other than perhaps Kelsey at times, but even that hasn't really been true this season. But I think just the dimension he adds to their offense is really helpful, and the fact that he hasn't just been a go ball 3 targets a game that we throw deep to him, but he's actually been a guy who can run horizontal concepts and keep their offensive structure in place, and you can use them in a few different ways, has been really helpful. They've been trying to find a guy like that, right? And they've, like the Tonys, the Hardmans, like those guys have not worked out and become the players that they hoped they would be. And now you've got an opportunity to have that guy with Worthy, I think, that can actually be what they hoped all these other guys were going to be before. And I think that can be a huge offense and has been a huge boost to them already. 3 touchdowns this season. And so I think there's more they can do with that. Honestly, if you told me the Chiefs, they have the lowest ADOT as a passing offense in the entire NFL, I think, this season, if you told me that was going to be their offensive profile and that Xavier Worthy was still going to impress me in the first couple weeks, I would have said, wow, he's more well-rounded than I thought he would be. And so I have been impressed with his ability to fit into a system that hasn't really, I mean, there's been a deep ball here or there, but hasn't really like just said, oh, you're this guy for us. We're going to throw it to you deep, 3 to 5 times every single game, but has asked him to do a lot more. I've been impressed with that.
Yeah, and the Chiefs, shocking, I know. They're great at evolving players, developing players, right? It was the same conversation that we had with Rashee Rice when he was coming into the league, how he needed to look completely different than the player that he was at SMU, whether you liked him or not. If he was going to succeed at the NFL level, the Chiefs saw that, and they're putting him in good situations to succeed. It seems like that's the case with Xavier Worthy as well. Look, it's just admitting you don't know ball by not putting, Jalen Coker in there, but that's fine. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Not all of us can know ball. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Let's move on to.
Wait, should we talk about the fact that Rome Odunze wasn't in here for a second?
I think Rome's been fine. But there have been other wide receivers that have stood out, in my opinion, more over the last 8 weeks. That's simply all it is. So, yeah, that's my opinion of Rome. And I think that it was really nice that in this past game where the Bears were playing the Commanders, when the Commanders were actually when the Bears, were going on their run, I think it was that third down pass that was either a corner route or an out route to Rome Odunze that was beautiful. And you go, that's the connection we want to see. That's fantastic. It was at a crucial moment in the game. It was when they needed it the most, and they were able to hook up and be great there. So I think the future is bright for Rome Odunze. There have just been so many wide receivers, I think, already that have been shining through these first 8 weeks a little brighter than he has.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not super concerned about him. I think he's going to be good. This offense has been a tricky fit, I think, for pretty much everybody, to be honest, so far amongst the Bears pass catchers. I think Xavier Leggette's been solid as well. And the only wide receiver, the guys who've really struggled are the Jalen's, right? Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan, I think, have struggled a good bit this season. We'll see how McMillan, operates as he gets more and more opportunities. But I think there's some adjustment to the league stuff. And then my guy, Jalen Polk, which is probably the surest sign that I don't know ball, as my evaluation on Polk was pretty high, and he has really struggled with that adjustment. I do still think the future could be bright for him, but those guys haven't done too much yet. They've kind of disappointed. Troy Franklin could be thrown into that mix as well. And then Adonai Mitchell's the one that has no production for us to put him on this team, but the tape has been really good. So fun wide receiver class so far. Lots of players. Luke McCaffrey's been solid. We haven't even mentioned everybody. Very hard to pick and narrow down to just a top 3 or a top 6 for this exercise.
Let's move on to the offensive line. A little bit easier of an exercise. Although I do think there's one spot that we might differ, if we're going to differ at all. At the offensive tackle spots, I didn't necessarily mean for it to be a left tackle and a right tackle. I don't know if you got that detailed with it, but I have Joe Alt and Talize Fuaga as my two guys here as left and right tackle. Offensive guard, I have Dominic Pooney at one of the spots, and then the other guard spot, I have Mason McCormick. I think that you probably watched more snaps necessarily of the Pittsburgh Steelers than I have, but it was basically between him and Jackson Powers-Johnson, and McCormick their stats are very similar. They've played about the same amount of overall snaps, but McCormick has given up less pressures. It's a lower pressure percentage. So they're sort of the same when it comes to run blocking, at least in our grading system, but McCormick's given up less pressures. And so I just went with him with the nod there, and then gave Jackson Powers-Johnson the second team look. And then Zach Frazier, another Steeler here, has to be the choice at center, although I would shout out Bo Limmer, who I think is playing really, really well, and would be, it's him and Grant Barton, sort of a coin toss there of who you're going to put as that second team player. But I ended up giving it to Limmer because his pressure percentage is, again, lower that he has given up than Grant Barton. Then they played about similar snaps. So that's what I've got in my first team: Joe Alt, Talize Fuaga, Dominic Pooney, Mason McCormick, and then Zach Frazier. Who do you got?
So we have one major disagreement here where I would say I have the same starting lineup you have as Hip. I have J.C. Latham at left tackle. Okay. And I actually don't even this is probably our biggest disagreement. I don't even think Fuaga has been very good this season, especially in pass protection.
What?
So I wouldn't even have him as
given
like
up
an
a lot
honorable
of pressures,
mention.
but I think he's grading really well as a run blocker. I don't think
he has been a solid run blocker. Yeah, no doubt. If I guess it's sort of, and this may be a philosophical difference, because it depends how much you weigh things, right, too. Fuaga has been a very good run blocker. His ability to get to some second-level stuff and to be able to even get out around ends when they're running outside of him, and to be able to seal guys or get to the second level is really impressive. There's also some really sloppy footwork stuff off the line where he's slow off the line and he can get grabbed and sort of tossed or knocked aside. So the variance is big, but if you're talking about capabilities in the run game, especially for this scheme, Like he really is like a nice piece for them in that regard. And as things can get more consistent for him, I do think we're actually going to see a really, really good player. My biggest issue is this, Trevor, and you can feel free to push back on this, like because I think Fuaga is crazy talented. I just think he may end up being an interior offensive lineman eventually because there are just so many issues in pass protection with him, especially when he has to true pass set right now. The early in the season, the Saints kind of hid some of those things with sliding protections and the boots that they did and going so heavy play action. And so guys weren't really teeing off on him. But when game situations started to get away from them as the season has gone on, you've seen some of the cracks start to be revealed with him where, okay, now we're playing from behind. Now we have to go to more of a straight drop back game. We can't just live in play action. They're blitzing the play action. Nobody's falling for it. We have to get to some other stuff. The script is not in our favor all the time. Now you're seeing like the real issues, like with him giving up a short corner all the time to rushers around the edge. And that's like the primary path you can't get beat. I think we can fix guys who have like maybe not all guys who have anchor issues. It depends what the exact issue is. I think we can fix guys who give up inside counters. We can teach you to stop oversetting, but guys who get beat on their outside edge as a tackle, like I think there are some things that can be better with that, but typically those guys like either end up having to move spots. Plus, he doesn't have this like unbelievable tackle body type where you just be like, no, he's tackling no matter what. He has to be a tackle. Like I think there's going to be alluring things to a guy that can move in the run game like he does inside a guard. So maybe I'm sticking to my pre-draft priors on that where I felt like he might be better as a guard at the next level. He is adjusting and switching sides of the line of scrimmage. That should be noted not sides of the line of scrimmage, sides of the formation, going to left tackle from right tackle where he played in college. But I think it's been a pretty bumpy road for him in pass protection. And Latham has not been perfect by far. Yeah. But I think he's gotten more better as the season's gone on type of path. Whereas I think with Fuaga, it's been revealed as the season's gone on that this guy has some real concerns in pass protection that we have to work around. And then Latham in the run game, I think, is just like that duo scheme when those doubles are ferocious. And so I'm a fan of that as well.
Yeah, I think the difference was, Fuaga is second in the NFL at most pressures given up. Stone Forsythe's the only offensive lineman who has given up more pressures than Fuaga. So I definitely want to recognize that it hasn't been perfect from him either. But the drop between his pressure percentage, which I think right around 8%, to J.C. Latham's, which is 7%, the gap wasn't big enough for me to say, because I have J.C. Latham as like second team, like very easily. I think that he's been good. But I still feel as though what Fuaga has been is an impact run blocker. The impact run block percentage that we have for Fuaga is so much higher than it is for Latham. It didn't necessarily make up for the smaller gap in pressure percentage from these guys. But if you're sort of looking at, like, I think that you put it a great way. Like, it's sort of how you're looking at it philosophically. I was a little bit worried about Fuaga when it came to being a true pass protecting offensive tackle. There was some talk of him going to the inside, and I think he'd be a great guard. I really do. But I was definitely somebody who said, you let him fail at tackle, right? I mean, like, you put him at tackle first because I think that he can hold up in that regard. And you got to remember this too. He's playing left tackle right now. He played right tackle his entire career when he was at Oregon State. So that's going to take a little bit of time for him to get used to that as well. So not only a little bit of physical limitations that you see from him, but also stylistically him going from the right to the left side of the offensive line, that does not help as well. So I ended up with Fuaga. I was pretty comfortable with that, although I did have J.C. Latham as my next guy in here. And then just I'll shout out your guy DJ Glaze. Like, he's really the only other offensive tackle that you would consider as like the second team. There just hasn't been another player that stood out. I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's how I felt about it for those four offensive tackles.
Yeah, I do feel the same way, and that's pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean, this was touted as one of the best offensive line classes that we've had in some time, and there certainly have been good players on the list, I think. But I mean, Fauton who's hurt, but most of these guys have played this year, played a good bit. And, I think, would you have said before the season that our guards are going to be Dominic Puny and Mason McCormick for this? Listen, those guys have played well, like for sure. Puny's been really good. McCormick, since he stepped in, has been a really solid player. I mean, I think that there might be some issues revealed over time, and certainly had his issues with Dexter Lawrence on Monday night at times, but who doesn't? But overall, I just feel like it really, like, we haven't really seen the tackles at the top yet do exactly what we think. Now, Marius Mims is coming on. I'm intrigued for sure. I think there have been some promising signs from some of these guys, but overall, it hasn't been like hit the ground running in the NFL. And I think it just goes to show, Trevor, this is just such a hard position. I mean, you've seen Tyler Guyton struggle. We talked about Fuaga, and even Latham, who we have on this list, I think has struggled at times as well this season. Roger Rosengarten's had some just got put on the floor type of moments for the Ravens, and he's had some good moments too. And Fashanu stepped in there for the Jets, and he's switching sides, and that's been a real struggle for him. And Suamatia's already been benched once. Blake Fisher got in there. Some people liked him, including I liked him. I thought he was okay, and he was brutal like when he was in there. And so like it's just been a really bumpy ride for a lot of these guys, and it's such a hard position to translate to the league, because in college, the types of fronts that you face, the pass obvious situations are so much less because people run so much more, and there's such a more complex scheme to the run, and like there's just so many more variables to think about. You're not getting guys screaming off the edge, testing you in your outside hip that all have pass rush moves in college. It's just such a big jump up to the NFL and how they play on passing downs, that a lot of the run game stuff can translate, but how you protect, especially in true pass set situations. Some of these guys have barely true pass set in their life in college, Trevor.
Right.
And they get to the NFL and they have to handle these absolute demons off the edge, and it takes a while to make an adjustment. So you're 100% right. Fuaga is a good example. Should absolutely get the start. Keep trying him at tackle. Keep seeing if he develops there. 100% agree that's the right approach. It's just going to take a while for these guys if they hit, because this is a hard position to play early on in the NFL.
So Dominic Pooney, Mason McCormick, and then Zach Frazier. Those are your interior offensive linemen. I'm guessing we're the same there.
Yep.
Okay.
And Joe Aldo, right tackle. Yeah, we had the same except for I had Latham and you had Fuaga at left tackle.
Yep. So for the offense, we've got the same list, except for you had Ladd McConkey, I had Marvin Harrison Jr., I had Talise Fuanga, you had J.C. Latham. So those are the two differences that we had there. Wonder how many differences we're going to have on the defensive side of the ball. Before we get to that, best part about football season, guys, it's always about checking the post-game stats, right? Which wide receivers had the 2 touchdowns, which rookies went off, right? Which guys are passed for more than 300 yards, all that good stuff. If you think you know what's going to happen before kickoff, you got to check out Pick 6 from DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now. All you do is select between 2 to 6 players. Choose if they will have more or less of a single stat. That's it. And it's that simple. For all the first-time Pick 6 players, you can check this out. New customers, they play $5 on their first Pick 6 set. You get 50 in Pick 6 credits right there. It could be any of these rookies. You can look at Brock Bowers and say, all right, they're still sleeping on him. Whether it's receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, whatever, you can bet more or less of that. Maybe you think some of these guys are going to regress a little bit. Maybe you're a little bit of a hater like John. But you can make money for being a hater, And you can check out the lines, and if you think that you have the ability to make a little bit of money doing that, do so. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now. Use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF for new customers. Play $5 on your first Pick 6 set. You get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available with problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. All right, defensive time. A little bit of wiggle room here. I think more in the secondary than anything else. Let's talk about the front guys first. Let's do the front 7, technically front 6, because we got 2 interior defensive linemen, 2 edge rushers, 2 linebackers that we're doing here for this exercise. The 2 interior defensive linemen that I have T'Vondre Sweat, I have Byron Murphy. I have both the Texas guys here on the first team for defensive tackle. For edge rusher, one of them has to be Jared Verse. Looks like a shoo-in for defensive player of the year at this point. And then the other edge rusher, I have Latu, although I think that there are 2 guys that at least deserve a little bit of a shout-out. Linebacker, I got Edgerrin Cooper as one of the spots. I think he's been fantastic. And then Jalen Carlisle for the Indianapolis Colts has the other spot there for me. John, did we disagree anywhere within the front 6, 7 guys?
Who did you say you had for defensive tackles again?
I have T'Vondre Sweat, and I have Byron Murphy II.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I have the Texas.
I really went back and forth between Sweat and Fisk, and then I was just like, you know what? I've always said I value the pass game more from this position, so I'm going to put Fisk in there because he has been better on passing downs. He's been decidedly worse on rushing downs, and so that actually could factor in. So again, really a philosophy thing. I guess you're trying to get back in Titans fans' good graces after leaving Latham off the list. Makes sense. They
Funny how that
definitely
works.
will come for your neck, as we found on the show. So Sweat, putting him in there makes sense. Completely, totally fine with that. The rest was pretty easy in terms of the front four, in my opinion. Jared Versus, you said. I think he's like kind of a tier above everybody else, maybe on this defensive group so far. There's been solid players, but there's just, maybe we talk about the nickel spot. There might be some really good nickels in this class, but Byron Murphy has been awesome when he's been out there on the field. The lows are very low, but the highs are very high. It is very Grady. I think I've said this on this show. I've definitely said it on a show, but very Grady Jarrett-esque to me, like especially early Grady Jarrett-esque, where it was like, wow, for Jarrett's case when he was the 5th round pick, wow, this guy definitely should have been drafted way higher. He's really explosive and really fun and really exciting on all 3 downs. And then there's also like 5 plays every game where like he gets killed. And so like that's kind of where Murphy's at. But the pies are just so good, and I think it's everything else is going to stabilize, and he's going to be in that tier of where Jarrett was during his career. I put Fisk in there. I think he's been disruptive, but I actually talked about him. I think he's been pretty up and down this season. Didn't really have a great DT2 choice. Please, Johnny Newton, please don't make us, Trevor and I, look bad.
No, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. We're good.
Please.
We'll be good. We'll be good.
Please take advantage of this opportunity. I saw a clip, by the way, of Johnny Newton who tossed somebody and got into the backfield, and I was like, yes, he's doing it. And then I looked closer at the clip and I realized it was Coleman Shelton for the Bears, and I was like, this doesn't even count. This guy's the worst center in the league.
Yes, it does. It counts. It counts. Give it to him. We need this.
Look, he gets credit for it. It goes down. Leatu Latu was my other edge. Thought he was, the top 2 edges are very clear in my opinion. Latu's been really good. I think it's been about finding consistency snap to snap for him, but he is definitely on his way. Edge Cooper, my LB1 personally as a elite ball knower, my LB1 Edge Cooper has been awesome for Green Bay. Yes, it's a role right now, and they are sort of cycling a lot of their linebackers right now, but his stuff on passing downs has been unbelievably transformative for that defense. It probably deserves its own little segment on the show, but just the amount of things he can do at a high level already, plus the blitzing, and totally fearless in run support. Yeah, he's not a big guy, but totally fearless when it comes to taking on blocks and getting to spots. He looks like he is going to be a real player for them as he evolves into a bigger role. But right now, the passing down stuff is pretty high-end stuff. And then Peyton Wilson was my other linebacker. This was close. There were some guys who played some roles. I think it's Carlisle for the Colts has been impressive this season. And when I've noticed him, and you could definitely throw his name in there. Wilson has played this second linebacker spot. Really doesn't have a great option in my opinion. Wilson has done some pretty good things. He's been able to step in and play a role early on in his career without getting picked on or anything like that. There are definitely things that need to improve in his game, especially some of the stuff that he does in coverage, but he doesn't look like a sore thumb in any facet of linebacker play right now, where he's just not going to be able to play in this big area that's really concerning for him long term. So I do think he can be a player over time that they rely on. It's definitely still coming together this season, but there really wasn't an obvious LB2 choice for me.
Yeah, I think just to overview a couple of things that you said, the Braden Fisk T'Vondre Sweat, I think Sweat's floor has been so much higher. Now, I was much higher on Braden Fisk as a player, so I love that you're giving him the shout out, and I would love for you to actually be right in this regard. Fisk got 23 pressures, but the pass rush win percentage still wasn't like it was above 10%. It's not like he was lighting the world on fire. So I felt like I needed to go with the higher floor in T'Vondre Sweat because of what he's shown over the first 8 weeks. I will also shout out Elijah Chapman for the Giants, who I understand, he's playing next to Dexter Lawrence and Raheem Nunez-Roches and Brian Burns and Azeez Ojulari, Kayvon Thibodeau. All right, you're getting a lot of single looks, but he has an above 12% pass rush win percentage, and I think that he is playing well. He is flash. So I gave Chapman one of those second team spots, as I did Fisk, for having the 2 Texas guys in Sweat and Murphy as my 1 and 2. For edge rushers, yeah, it was Jared versus Leatu Latu. Wasn't really too much of a conversation. I think Jonah Ellis has been okay. And he's gotten a lot of decent playing time there, but he hasn't really stood out as a pass rusher or a run defender. He's just getting a lot of good playing time, I think. Javonte Jean-Baptiste from Notre Dame, though, now playing for the Washington Commanders, has not been great as a pass rusher, but has been a pretty reliable run defender, which I've really enjoyed watching from him. So he was somebody who I was a fan. I got to him late in the draft process last year, and I ended up watching him, and he started at Ohio State, and then he was at Notre Dame, and I'm a fan of his. I really am. So I think that he's a good player. I'm glad that Dan Quinn's getting a lot out of him. Edgerrin Cooper was the obvious choice here. Carlisle, I think, is grading really well. You mentioned it's sort of a specialized situation that they're putting him in, but I had Peyton Wilson next, and it was sort of between Carlisle and Peyton Wilson as who was I going to put there. So we almost had the same exact linebackers there. And then the fourth linebacker, so the other second team spot, there really was not a choice. I'm going to be honest with you. I gave it to Trevor Wallace for the Panthers simply because he has played the most and he hasn't looked abysmal. It's not like he's really standing out in a lot of categories or many categories at all, but he's at least getting out there and getting some playing time. So there really wasn't a choice outside of those guys. So I think for the most part, it's pretty much similar. The only spots that we disagreed with were the spots that I thought were the closest, honestly, between Fisk and Sweat, and then Wilson and Carlisle. So those are those two spots.
I actually think Wallace is going to be good. I think I've said this on this show. He would be my fourth linebacker as well for this. I actually think he's going to be good, Trevor. Like, I think he has real traits for this position. I think his awareness is already improving. He's tackled really well and been under control as a player. I thought he'd be too aggressive early on. I think he's actually been pretty tempered in that regard. You can see he's trying to like think through and learn the position. It's got to come faster in run defense for sure. Like, and time will tell if that's able to happen. Obviously, the group in front of him is brutal. He's playing with the worst defense in the league. But I just watch him and I think like he just seems like a guy who's figuring some things out. And he's played way more snaps than any other linebacker in this rookie class so far. After the injury to Shaq Thompson, he's been in there. So he is definitely like trial by fire right now. And it is a fire. Like, this is the fiery furnace right now where Carolina's playing defense. But I just think he looks the part. I think there's a lot of potential here for him to be a really good 3-down linebacker in this league.
It's Cole, what's the Shia LaBeouf movie that everybody uses a meme now where he's like, hey, wake up, you asked for this, you're in it now, like this is it, like don't run now, like you're in it. That's basically like Trevor Wallace, I feel like, hitting the ground running with the Panthers. It was like, oh, well, fun athletic linebacker at Kentucky, boom, in the NFL. Now you got nothing. You're in the middle of probably the worst defense and you have no help around you. Before we get to the secondary, which is I think where the real debates start, we're gonna have some fun talking about that. This podcast is brought to you by Cherry Bunny, the performance drink that is fueling the healthy revolution. If you live an active lifestyle at all whatsoever, whether you are training for a marathon, whether you are lifting heavy multiple times a week, or whether you're just going for a walk around the neighborhood a couple of times a week, Cherry Bunny can really help you recover and feel your best. The tart cherries have the highest antioxidants of any fruit or vegetable in the world. It's got natural anti-inflammatory with incredible benefits. It'll help reduce soreness. It'll help increase the recovery, support the immunity, help with improved sleep, and they got specific products to really help with sleep as well. Every single NFL team that traveled overseas, they had Cherry Bunny with them this season. Almost 500 collegiate and professional sports teams use this product, and it's because they've got a lot of different ways to really, really help you out. Every single NCAA football and basketball national champ has used this product since 2007. Products are available at Amazon, cherrybunny.com, retailers nationwide, including Publix, Kroger, things like that. So check local, but if you can't get it there, you can get it over at cherrybunny.com. They've got all sorts of stuff. They got gummies, they got gels, they got drinks, everything, man. Go check it out. It's fantastic stuff. I've only tried the Pure Recovery, but the Pure Recovery was fantastic, so I love this. So now I got to get more of those products. And like I said, if you're living an active lifestyle at all whatsoever, check them out over at cherrybunny.com. All right. Corners and safeties.
First out about this.
First outside. I prayed about it. Yeah, I really did. I did. First outside corner. Quinyon Mitchell. I think Mitchell's a stud. I think he's been fantastic this year. I think he's got to have one of those spots. Second outside corner spot. You ready for it?
Oh, yeah.
Mike Samerstill. He's my second outside corner there. He is an absolute dog. I thought that he might have been. I even thought he could have only been a slot receiver or a slot corner going into this league, and I still had him as a second-round pick. I still had him with a second-round grade if I just thought he was going to be a slot corner. Now they've got him at outside corner, and they got him one-on-one with who is it? DJ Moore in the corner of the end zone, and it's like, dude, game's on the line. They're putting Mike Samerstill at outside corner against DJ Moore. I'm like, that's respect as a rookie for Dan Quinn to put that on your plate. Shows what kind of football player you are. In the slot, I went full homer. I went with Tyke Smith. I got Tyke Smith as a slot there, but there's a handful of slot corners that I think need to be talked about here. One of the safety spots on the first team has to go to Evan Williams and how he is playing for the Green Bay Packers. And then the other safety spot, I have Tyler Nubin, but there's another player that I really want to shout out that I could not put on the first team because he has not played enough, but somebody who I think is just going to be a stud in this league that we will get to as we kind of talk about this. So I got Quinyon Mitchell, Mike Sainristil, Tyke Smith, Evan Williams, and Tyler Nubin. Who you got in your secondary?
We were the same up until Tyler Nubin.
Okay, who you got?
I differ from you. Yeah, so Quinyon Mitchell, 100%. I've talked him up on this show before. I think he's played well. I think it's gone under the radar how well he's played this season. Sainristil playing outside corner, the degree. Ollie and I did a whole segment on him on the Read Optional podcast last week. Just being really impressed with him. I don't think anybody really even talked about him or considered him an outside corner, and seeing him play in that capacity for Washington has been exciting. It's definitely not perfect. None of these rookie corners have been perfect, although I would also say it's pretty interesting that hardly any rookie corner, and a lot have played, have been really bad this season. Arnold has had the penalty issues, I think, that have hurt him, but I still think watching him, I'm like, oh yeah, like he's still fine. Like, yeah, I think he's still going to be good. Like, he's figuring out. Nobody looks like lost or like way less athletic, and so that's been encouraging for the group as a whole. But I just think Sainristil's made a lot of plays. The other thing with Sainristil that you get is versatility, play inside out, and also he's been the best probably of the outside corners against the run / making plays in the flat short game. He's got 13 stops amongst the corner group. I think that's highest or close to the highest, and so he's been really wrecking people in that area. And then in the slot, I have Tyke Smith here too. This gets interesting because Andrew Phillips is also in consideration here. Has been awesome this season. He's played a lot less than Smith because of injuries, and Smith missed this past game with a concussion. Phillips is still behind him in snaps, I think. But that I could see that going either way for sure. Both these guys have been absolutely awesome. I really don't even. One of the things I want to figure out this season is if I end up having a preference between the two of them as the year goes on. But so far this season, it's really been hard to parse them. They play pretty similar. Phillips might be a little bit faster, which may give him more upside, may just be a little bit of a better athlete eventually. But Smith's been tested way more in coverage and has been really, really good. Phillips, almost all his top plays have been in the run game and kind of being the flat destroyer as well. Cooper DeJean's been awesome, but he's only played 149 snaps, so I couldn't really put him in this conversation. But he looks like he is filling that role very, very well for Philly. And even, there's been guys like Jerry Jones and Beanie Bishop that probably deserve shout-outs too. So
Jerry's been awesome. Yeah. He's been that slot corner group between Jerry and Jones, how well Cooper DeJean's played over the last couple of weeks, and then obviously the Andrew Phillips versus Tyke Smith debate for one of those spots as a slot corner. I mean, we got some stud slot corners in this draft class, and that's not even considering the best one in Mike Sainristil, who is now playing on the outside too. So stud corners, and
probably will move inside if they ever get a real corner out there.
So before we moved on to safety, because I want to hear who you have instead of Tyler Nubin, I did also want to shout out, I wondered if there were any other considerations for outside corner, specifically Renardo Green. Did you think about Renardo Green at all here? Because Renardo Green would have been like the next man in for me. What he is doing in single coverage, he's shutting down some wide receivers in single coverage situations, which is where he's most comfortable. He played a ton of press man coverage when he was at Florida State, and when he's been in those opportunities, he has been a shutdown player. He almost has an elite coverage grade, I think, as a single coverage defender this season, which is pretty hard to do as any corner, let alone a rookie. So he is another player. I think people are going to shout out like Kamari last year as well, who I think has been fine. I think Kamari's been a little bit of up and down, but Renardo Green would have been that next guy in for me because of how well he's playing.
Yeah, Green was the number 3 guy for me as well for the reasons you just talked about. I think he's been really, really good. And so I feel like he would be a really good consideration. San Francisco, by the way, in this weird backward season, may have actually stumbled into like more good corners than they've ever had. And just happens to be the year that they actually need. Normally they've been like, whatever, a corner and whatever in the secondary, we're prioritizing the front 7. This year they actually need defensive linemen. And they've got like 100 corners who can play. Popping out of everywhere, and so it's kind of an interesting situation. But Green has been really good for them. Only played 194 snaps, 14th most of all rookie corners. So couldn't put him on this list. End of the season, come back to me. We may have a different conversation. Mm-hmm. The other guy I actually had in consideration is not necessarily beloved by PFF grades. He's been fine, I think, by PFF grades. I think he's 61.6 overall. He's been very good in run defense, I think. Tackling has been hit or miss. And then the coverage has been really hit or miss. but Nate Wiggins for the Ravens, just because I am like all in on the high end reps for Nate Wiggins. Is kind of how I thought about him in college. I was really high on him when I first watched him. Then the more I watched, I was like, you know what? Maybe he just gets killed in the NFL. He's so small. Like, he didn't really tackle. He plays his own way. But like guys like this who are just like unbelievable short area athletes tend to make enough plays that even if they give up plays, they'll be thought of pretty highly, I think, at this position, and coveted because they'll be playmakers. And he has really been in position to make a lot of plays this season. And I think he's been really exciting. Young player, got 4 pass breakups on the season. And he's been in position for a couple interceptions, had one kind of taken away from him by Marlon Humphrey against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So he has been really, really impressive to me. And I would say just based on tape, I would have him like above guys like Lassiter, who I think's been fine, but that system and just like what they ask him to do, I think he's been good at that. But like, I also think it's like not as hard to play in that system as it is to play doing a lot of the things that Baltimore's doing. And they've had their issues as a secondary too. And Wiggins has given up some double moves, and it's not perfect in terms of the tape, but I just think when I watch him, I'm like, yeah, this guy's already pretty good and makes a lot of plays. I think he's going to be really good. So he doesn't grade quite as highly as some other guys you could mention for this, but I still think he's going to be a player. He'd be my pick for.
It's fun betting on Nate Wiggins. Like it's just fun. Like he's a fun player to bet on, and so you always sort of want to see the good in him because I think he could be a really good corner. All right, safeties. Let's round it out. Who you got at safeties?
Well, I got Evan Williams in there as well because we talked about him a lot on this show. I think he's really been awesome. Like, it's been really impressive to see what he's done in coverage, but also now when he's able to play closer to the line of scrimmage, just really active, makes a lot of plays there too. Reminds me, honestly, a little bit of Micah Hyde and how he moves and plays. And obviously Hyde was with the Packers for a little while, but I'm thinking more of his Bills tape. How the role, Hyde was that big nickel type. Can Williams eventually be that? Right now that's kind of Bullard, but when Williams plays down or has played in the low red area when you've needed your safety to step down and take a guy in these bunch formations and things like that, I think he's done a really good job in those situations. So I think he reminds me sort of that type of player, just watching him move. And so I've been impressed with him. And then my other safety was Malik Mustafa, because I just feel like when I watch him play, he's just a way more impactful player than Nubin. Like, I think Nubin's been fine, and he's generally like painted inside the lines and done what the team's asked him to do. And like, he's not been victimized. He's not blowing it. He's not making mistakes. But I just like Mustafa a little bit more from just my personal taste, because I think he's just made way more plays. He's just been way more explosive, way more impactful as a player so far. And it's not always been perfect with any of these safeties for sure. But I definitely think Mustafa looks like more of a difference maker to me. So I just went with him for that reason. I think Nubin's been fine though.
I can understand that. I think Mustafa's been a little too up and down, where I guess he has made more plays necessarily than Nubin has, but I think Nubin's looked really good for a safety. And maybe it's my pre-draft prior showing up, because I really like Tyler Nubin, and I thought he was safety 1 in the past class, and I thought he was getting slept on for no reason. So maybe there's a little bit of that involved there. But I had Malik Mustafa. He would have been the next safety in. The other guy that I would throw into this, he has not played enough to where I could not even really consider him here. Dadrian Taylor-Demerson for the Arizona Cardinals. I really liked watching him at the East-West Shrine Bowl when I got to see him in person. Brett Coleman and EJ Snyder from Bootleg Football, they did a great job breaking his game down, and I think they interviewed him as well, and they loved him, and they were able to kind of shine a spotlight on just sort of the high IQ player that he is. He doesn't play a lot right now just because the depth chart doesn't really allow him to play a ton, but in the one game where he played more than 10 snaps, he got an interception, and he sees the field so well. He's going to be a stud. He's going to be a stud in this league, and it's only a matter of time before he becomes a starter, and he's going to be fantastic. And we've already seen a little bit of that. I couldn't put him in here because, like I said, he's only played 42 total snaps, but on those 42 snaps, he has a season grade of 90.3. He has a 69.6 run defense grade, and then an 86.7 coverage grade. So it's such a small sample size, but he's already showcased, I think, what he is going to be in this league, which is an impactful starting safety, and it's only a matter of time. So I thought he deserved the shout-out, even though he just has not played very much at all.
Well, and the interception he had was a nice one, too.
Right, exactly. Really it wasn't just a lucky interception.
Right, but he's played 42 snaps this year, so you're just trying to impress people. It's just all there is to it, Trevor. You're trying to Jalen Coker, Jalen Devers. But I will say this safety class, we talked about this before, if we already have Nubin, Kalen Bullock, Bullard is playing like sort of a nickel spot now, but he started the season in safety. He still plays safety at times. Mustafa, Evan Williams, those five are like in there. Cole Bishop looks like, was he in there now that they've had their injuries? Like,
yeah, I mean, I considered him. He's still hasn't.
He's not
graded.
He's not played
well.
No. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
He's been fine, but I'm just saying like that's 6 starting safeties right now from this class.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor Demerson is probably going to get his shot at some point. And Jaden Hicks has also another guy that has barely played. And I honestly wasn't high on pre-draft, so I'm not saying I think he's going to be great. But in his 29 snaps, he has an interception as well. And like it was, not as good as Taylor Demerson's interception, but he has looked good too. If we end up with 8 starting safeties from this class, it's going to be pretty wild, Trevor.
That might be like 7 more than we thought we were going to get, depending on what you would have thought of Bullard, going into this thing.
And not that Bullock's had his rough spots. Bullard's had his rough spots. You mentioned Mustafa's had a rough moment or two. All these guys have. Newbin on the touchdown at the Cowboys.
It's hard to play safety.
It's hard. Yeah, exactly. But the fact that these guys are able to be out there tells me this is the position, maybe, Trevor, that we have the hardest time scouting, or one of the hardest times scouting, because so much of his mental communication ability. And we are looking at like all the things that we see on tape based on the college system that they're in. But a lot of these guys have translated really quickly to being able to play NFL roles at least somewhat of a competent level, at least do something well, even if they're not perfect at this point. And I don't think the league was like hurting so bad at this position that all these guys just had to play right away. I think they've beat out some real players and ended up in these roles. And, some of them have stepped in because of injury, and I don't think they're going to give the spots back. So I don't think it's like this unbelievable, like we have a true elite game changer type of player maybe in this class, but we could end up looking back and saying like we got a lot of capable, solid starting type of players from a class that a lot of people thought was like backup role player, special teams type safety class.
Yep. All right, just to recap, my midseason all-rookie team, and then, John, I'll have you read yours. I had Jaden Daniels at quarterback. I had Bucking Irving at running back. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 3 wide receiver spots, and then Brock Bowers at tight end. My offensive line, 2 offensive tackles, Joe Alt and Taliza Fuanga. Offensive guards, Dominic Puney and Mason McCormick. And then at center, I got Zach Frazier. On the defensive side of the ball, my interior defensive guys, I got Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy II. Edge rushers, Jared Verse and Leatu Latu. Linebackers, Edgerrin Cooper and Jalen Carlisle. Cornerbacks, outside corners, I got Quinyon Mitchell and Mike Sainristil. Slot, I got Tyke Smith. Safeties, Evan Williams and Tyler Newbin. John, what was your midseason all-rookie team?
I've got Jaden Daniels at quarterback, Bucky Irving at running back, Brock Bowers at tight end, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and Ladd McConkey at wide receiver. Left tackle, J.C. Latham. Left guard, Mason McCormick. Center, Zach Frazier. Right guard, Dominic Puney. Right tackle, Joe Alt. Edge rushers on the defensive side were Jared Verse and Leatu Latu. Defensive tackles were Byron Murphy and Braden Fisk. Linebackers were Edgerrin Cooper and Peyton Wilson. Cornerbacks were Quinyon Mitchell and Mike Sainristil, and nickel corner was Tyke Smith. Safety, Evan Williams and Malik Mustafa. Couple teams got multiple guys on here. That's pretty exciting, I think. Packers got, 2 defensive players? Steelers have, for me at least, 3 guys on this list? The Bucks have 2? Bucks 2 and an honorable mention. Yeah, it's some pretty good groups.
Yeah, San Francisco got Renardo Green and Malik Mustafa. Giants have Elijah Chapman and Andrew Phillips, not on the first team, but even like on the second team, just what we talked about, like what we talked about here on the show. I mean, obviously, like the Giants have Malik Neighbors as well. So a lot of guys, like a couple of teams with some really good draft classes like we talked about in the past couple of weeks. We would love to hear from you guys as well. Let us know who you think was snubbed in this one, what your midseason all-rookie teams could be. You could just do offense, just do a certain position, do offense and defense. We would love to hear from you. Hit us up at the comments section. That's the best way to do that. Go check out all of John's great work over at the Audible and Analytics Substack, as well as the Audible and Analytics podcast and the Read Optional podcast. He does a great job with Ollie Conley covering the league as a whole, not just rookies, but everybody, as you could tell. They do know ball as much as I would like to, bust some balls on here. They do actually know ball, which is why we have them here on the show. Appreciate everybody watching and listening to the show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Jon Ledyard. We will be back right here, same time, to talk about the rookies once again next week. See you guys then.